The latest images of Three Eye Atlas right here. Also, the latest news headlines on what's going on around the world. We've got different timelines. We've got nations building up their militaries like never before. So is 2030 the countdown to World War III? We're going to talk about it. Some people think it's already here. Clandestine operations, hybrid warfare in play. So buckle up, buttercups. Let's go. And how the heck are you? The first article that I wanted to share with you is from Professor Loeb showing the latest image of Three Eye Atlas. It's a good image. I'll do a screen share here with you. This was actually taken in New Mexico. Check this out. Magnificent images of jets around Three Eye Atlas. So this was taken in New Mexico, ground-based telescope. You can see the jet pointing towards the sun. And then the traditional tells, it looks like there's several there. This is from the, if you go directly to the ICQ comet observations, you can look at this image as well. It was taken in New Mexico yesterday. Pretty good image. This is another image of Three Eye Atlas. This was taken today. Check this out. So comet Three Eye Atlas, universal time. Here's all the data. And this is the imaging right here to the left. And then they did a computer rendition on that and outlined it. So there's a lot of speculation that this is a craft, that this is a fleet of crafts. And I don't see any solid evidence to suggest it's an alien craft. It's a very bizarre comet. But is it really bizarre, or is it just bizarre because this is the third interstellar comet that we have allegedly observed? And based upon the previous two and the information we have with traditional comets and asteroids and meteors, we're labeling it as very odd. I mean, the universe is a pretty big place, but there's so much in the news right now to talk about outside of Three Eye Atlas that I wanted to get into a lot more of the news that we have here. There are several experiments going on with HAARP over the past few months. I mean, they're constantly doing experiments, but some people have speculated the incredible auroras that we have been seeing in the night sky has been because of HAARP, and it's just not powerful enough to create red auroras thousands of miles away. It doesn't have that type of power. Now, it is incredible what it's doing. Some people think it's frightening. Some people think it's fascinating. I don't think it's a good idea to heat the ionosphere, but I mean, they're like, what could possibly go wrong? We're just going to heat up the ionosphere. So these are some of the experiments that they are doing. They're doing high frequency and very low frequency propagation campaigns to study high frequency and very low frequency radio wave propagation in the ionosphere. They're going to use these technologies to create artificial air glow. Some experiments will generate artificial air glow, which is an optical emission in the upper atmosphere. While it's usually subvisual, it can become visible under specific conditions, but you're not going to get visible conditions in Connecticut. Now, the VLE and ELF wave amplification, one goal is to investigate if certain waves in the ionosphere can amplify VLF and ELF waves. And satellite collision detection, another objective is to determine if satellites can use plasma waves for collision. That's pretty cool. Detection and avoidance. Frequency and timing. Frequencies will be in the 2.8 to 10 megahertz range, but transmit days and times are variable and depend on real-time ionospheric conditions. So there you go. This is actually this is directly from HAARP, and this is notice of transmission. They actually tell you on their website when they do different experiments. So you can go to their website if you think they're doing some kind of experiment or messing with the ionosphere, and then you can go down to research campaigns and click on the transmission notices. And this is what we've got coming up here in November. Today, over the next few days, there's going to be experiments, the November 17th through the 22nd. This is showing the frequencies they're going to be blasting into the ionosphere. And here's more data for those that like to dive into the statistics and the measurements. So there you go. HAARP, November 25th transmission notice. Is it causing the sun to turn red in Connecticut and Colorado? No. All right. So this is, once again, if you're just joining us, thank you for joining us. This is the latest image of Comet 3I Atlas, as you can see from the ground-based telescope in New Mexico. And here is all the data. Looks pretty cool. This, not so cool. Not so cool at all, actually, with the warmongers. So with NATO, well, let's go back to 3I Atlas real quick, and then we'll get into NATO. So I just want to talk about a couple more things with 3I Atlas. Okay, so Professor Loeb confirmed high-rise images are imminent. We should get those any day now. Expect extremely high-resolution morphology, jets, microfragments possible, rotations, signatures, or lack of them, which is the real story. Anticipation is huge because this could confirm or refute single rigid body versus complex cluster. The anti-tail remains sunward after perihelion. This isn't normal, according to traditional comets. The anti-tail's persistence favors a controlled or coherent structure, not a dusty, chaotic debris field. Its stability contradicts typical interstellar comet behavior, as seen with 2I Borisov. And then the new anomaly is the jets that are shooting out almost 1 million kilometers are not smeared by rotation. And that implies that the rotation is extremely slow, which is improbable given perihelion torques. And jets come from a fixed, engineered, or stable geometry, not random sublimation points. And then the Cassandra rumor continues to grow. So after I showed you a couple of days ago, potentially leaked footage of 3I Atlas taken from the Cassandra program and satellites behind the sun on our field of view on Earth, showing 3I Atlas. Well, the rumors continue to grow because a 20-year classified tracking profile program was activated exactly as designed when 3I Atlas entered the inner solar system. Now, if this is true, it means they potentially expected it, or at least they built the system for this exact scenario. And that's what I had calculated and said just a couple of podcasts ago. Now, in 2 days, we are going to be able to live stream and view 3I Atlas's live stream through the virtual telescope program. They were not able to show it last night when they wanted to because of weather. So we're going to get some pretty cool footage here coming up. And when it says virtual telescope project, it doesn't mean it's virtual. It means that like you can interact with these telescopes virtually, but the telescopes are real. And there's a multitude of telescopes that will be able to view this incredible object. So we've got a split community on 3I Atlas. We've got the natural exotic comet camp claiming it's a super active comet with strange dust dynamics, or the electric universe cosmology. Then we've got the non-gravitational acceleration indicating artificially, potentially, recoil forces, jet vectors, and long-term coherence. And that's the alien hypothesis. And then, well, let's get back to the electric universe camp, arguing the anti-tail and jets show plasma structuring, not dust. And I think that makes a lot of sense. So we do not have a breakup thus far. So we're still together. And High Rise is going to hopefully settle this as soon as they release the images. And I hope that that is soon. So that's what we've got with 3I Atlas thus far. The next article that I wanted to share with you all, let me pull this up here. NATO nation evacuates residents after Russian strike on ship. The port of Izmail in Ukraine's Odessa Oblast was struck overnight by a strike, suspected Russian drone that hit a Turkish-flagged LPG tanker named Orinda. The tanker was carrying approximately 4,000 tons of liquefied petroleum gas. And because the explosion occurred extremely close to the Romanian border, right across the Danube River, Romanian authorities ordered the preventative evacuation of residents and animals from the nearby village of Plaru and surrounding areas. Romania is a member of NATO, and its radar and surveillance systems tracked the event and emphasized that no unauthorized intrusion into Romanian airspace was detected, although spill effects posed a serious risk. You can read about that. Newsweek, Radio Free Europe, and more. So let's go back to this real quick. Now, clearly, This illustrates how war in Ukraine is increasingly spilling over into the doorstep of NATO territory, not just in adjacent maritime zones, but in very near border regions. And the vessel was Ukrainian coastal, near Ukrainian port and Turkish flag. The impact zone risked Romanian territory, raising questions of cross-border safety, rules of engagement, and collective defense thresholds. The evacuation signals that civilian populations in border zones are now in direct risk from actions targeting Ukrainian infrastructure, which has broader implications for NATO's readiness and its deterrence posture. If a disaster had occurred, the consequences could have been cross-border, complicating regional emergency responses and legal defense frameworks. We'll keep you posted. Next article. Poland railway blast was unprecedented act of sabotage, says Donald Tusk. You can read about it, The Guardian. So an explosion damaged a railway track on the line connecting Warsaw to Lublin and onward towards the Ukrainian border. The country's prime minister, Donald Tusk, called it an unprecedented act of sabotage aimed at Poland's security. A second incident damaged to overhead power lines and metal devices on tracks near Pullaway involving a train with 475 passengers also being treated as sabotage. Luckily, no casualties have been reported yet. Investigations have been launched. Authorities believe foreign intelligence services are likely involved. So this is a strategically important targeted rail line used for deliveries, including military aid to Ukraine. If a derailment had occurred, it could have been a major disaster, obviously with over 400 passengers. Poland says the damage could have caused a train to derail. This event also fits into a broader pattern of sabotage acts in Europe, such as rail, power, infrastructure, amid the Russia-Ukrainian war. It raises questions about Poland's domestic security, its infrastructure protection, and its role in the aid pipeline to Ukraine. If a foreign state is confirmed behind this, it could escalate tensions and prompt stronger responses from Poland and possibly allies. But will it? I mean, because Russia's certainly pushing the envelope with this, what is referred to as hybrid warfare, at least according to the news. All of the military sites that have seen drones that they can't account for, not only military sites, nuclear sites, airports that are being shut down. This is happening multiple times a week, various locations. And my question is, a couple years ago, when all of the drones were being reported over U.S. military bases during the Biden administration and during the transition, how many of those drones were potentially adversaries? A lot of people think they were just our own, creating fear in the media and trying to cause some type of wag dog scenario. But in reality, can we confirm that? No, we can't. We can't confirm that yet. And I'm actually questioning how many of those drones were potentially adversaries. But we'll talk about that more later. Some of it could have been projects with different defense contractors in the States to see how well the security was, what the actions and reactions were going to be, not only with the bases themselves and the people on base, how much information they could get, but what the news is going to do about it and how the people would react. Because New Jersey was designated as a major hub for new drone activity about 10 years ago, and we're seeing that unfold, and we've seen that unfold just the past couple of years. So, but let's get back to this act of sabotage with this Poland rail explosion. It occurred near the village of Mika, 100 kilometers southeast of Warsaw. The Polish defense minister announced inspection of 120 kilometers of track towards the Ukrainian border. The Interior Secretary Services Minister said the act is unprecedented in its most recent history. While Russia isn't formally naming or named in all sources, Polish officials view involvement of foreign intelligence services as very probable. Oh, you don't say. Kombucha. The outcome of the investigation. So whoever is identified and responsible, whether it's Russia or another state is officially blamed, we'll keep you posted on that. The security posture changes in Poland is definitely something you want to keep your eyes out for, and possibly in NATO, especially pertaining to infrastructure protection. It doesn't seem like NATO's gone very far. Like, it seems like NATO's been continually pushed and they continually back off. At least the media is portraying it that way. And a large part of that could be because the U.S. has, with this new administration, they've changed things up a bit. And that's another thing I want to talk about, the way that we've got the change of the name of the Pentagon back to the Department of War, like it was prior to World War II, and some of these old school making new school again in the administration, the military industrial complex, the Department of Defense, the way they want people in shape, they want people fit, they want people to shave their beards. There's definitely this transition back into making America's military looking, powerful again, not only from the technological aspect, but from the human aspect. Very interesting. And potentially because we're getting ready for World War III, which could be right around 2030. It'll seems like we're already in these proxy wars. We're building up to that. But when is the big hit going to happen? And what's going to happen in Venezuela right now? Venezuela's allies, Russia, Cuba, Iran. We've got China and Japan tensions right now after what Japan's president or prime minister said about defending Taiwan. The CCP did not like that. Militaries around the world are building up their technologies and their war chests with unprecedented amounts of money. So, like I say, buckle up, Buttercup. The next article. Putin could attack NATO member states by 2030. European Commissioner Andrius Kubilius highlights the potential threat to NATO members, particularly the Baltic states, from Russia by 2030. I would say before 2030, but it's that 2030 timeline which these large organizations and government bodies and groups and like the United Nations 2030 protocols, the Singularity 2030 potential, just the 2029 Apophis asteroid that's supposed to make its closest approach to Earth, but then that has been changed to don't worry, it's going to be okay, where it was considered a very real threat, hence the name Apophis. And I'm wondering how much of that, we just, like, would they tell us 5 years in advance if an asteroid was going to smash into New York City and cause incredible devastation and destruction? Would they tell us in advance? What do you think? But let's go back to this. So German general says Russia could launch limited attack on NATO anytime. That's Reuters. EU's top diplomat warns that Russia has a plan for long-term aggression against Europe. AP News. EU chief says Russia is waging a gray zone campaign and Europe must meet the challenge. And I don't think they have yet. So let's get into this. Andrius Kubilius, the European Commissioner for Defense and Space, stated that the intelligence from Germany, Denmark, Finland, and the Netherlands and the Baltic region suggests Putin could be ready to test Article 5 of NATO within the next 2 to 4 years, by 2030. He signaled out the Baltic states as among the more likely potential targets of Kremlin aggression in that time frame. He also emphasized that an attack on any NATO member would in turn be an attack on the entire alliance and the European Union. Yeah, but what if they don't have the means to do so? Why do you think they're building up their stockpiles right now? So if NATO believes an attack is plausible by 2030, it increases the urgency of strengthening collective defense, deterrence posture, and readiness, which we are seeing across the board. The Baltic region, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and other eastern flank NATO states may face elevated risk of hybrid or conventional action. Hybrid warfare mode, the warning ties into patterns of airspace violations, drone incursions, sabotage, cyber operations attributed to Russia. These could serve as preludes or probes ahead of a larger move. Now, the Article 5 implications: a direct attack triggers the NATO mutual defense commitment, making preparedness not just national, but alliance-wide. Investment and policy shift. The warning accelerates the need for higher defense spending, faster procurement of advanced systems, missile defense, ISR, rapid reaction forces, drone technologies, frequency technologies like the 6th generation of communications, space, race, weapons, and deeper EU-NATO integration. Official investigations and intelligence disclosure. Are specific threats or timelines shared publicly? Question. Which nations' intelligence services are backing the warning? Signs of Russia increasing forces, logistics, readiness, and Western military districts, especially those facing NATO's eastern flank. These are things to watch for. Hybrid warfare escalation, more frequent or bold incursions, such as air, cyber, maritime, into NATO territory. This could precede a larger move. What about all the cables that were severed deep sea by most likely espionage, where vessels would drop their anchors and pull them for miles across the seafloor in hopes of, well, most likely severing these communication ties? How many times has this been done over the past couple of years? These are all beta tests, folks. They're testing the waters, literally and figuratively. They're seeing how far they can push this envelope. They're seeing how much they can do before retaliatory measures are taken. Now, we've got retaliatory measures with finances, with, like, what was that billionaire's yacht that got not repoed, but got taken? What's the term? What's the term I'm looking for? Help me out. What are they doing with these Russian oligarchs' ships that are at ports that aren't in Russia? They're taking the ships and they're selling them to somebody else, but they're not repoing them. There's a definition for that. That's not, anyway, you know what I'm talking about. All right. Let me read through some of these comments. Stu says NATO has secret high-tech weapon systems that will be unleashed should Russia take that suicidal step. Maybe. Seizing. That's the word I was looking for, Cray. Thank you very much. Seizing. Requisition. Yes. That happened recently with a Chinese chip maker, I think in Denmark, and we can get into that in a moment. Don't quote me on that yet. So now we're going to see what NATO is going to do, how NATO is going to react to these hybrid warfare tactics. You know, keep your eyes open for political messaging, public opinion, how NATO governments communicate the risk to the publics. For example, did you hear about a letter that was leaked after sent out to hundreds of, maybe thousands of hospitals? It was in France last year. This letter goes out warning hospitals in France to be prepared for 30 to 50,000 new check-ins. Did you hear about that? This is a big deal. France hospital warning letter leaked. The Independent. French hospitals told to prepare for war in Europe by next year in leaked government letter. The country's health ministry has instructed hospitals to prepare for 30 to 50,000 situations. Be prepared for war by 2026. Interesting. And the connections France and Ukraine are making right now. Ukraine just agreed to buy, 100 French jets? Ukraine agrees to buy 100 French. Yeah. Ukraine to receive fleet of French fighter jets. They're getting pretty close. We've got the evacuation of residents. This is a big story right here also. Greece. Greece carried out a large-scale military exercise near Alexandroupolis, where a broad range of domestically developed drones and counter-drone tools were used for the first time in a full tactical drill. The kit includes quadcopters, fixed-wing drones, loitering munitions, land drones, drones dropping mines, spike strips, delivering supplies, laying smoke screens, even one built to crawl through tunnels. Military personnel from NATO and partner countries, US, France, Turkey, etc., observed Greece is signaling that its armed forces are shifting from imported systems to indigenous capabilities. I wonder why. This is a concrete move by Greece to strengthen its defense industrial base, reduce dependency on foreign suppliers, especially under regional tension with Turkey, and amid NATO's push for faster innovation. The shift towards drone-centric warfare echoes lessons from the Russia-Ukraine war. Smaller, agile systems, unmanned assets, rapid deployment matter more than traditional heavy platforms. For Greece, this drill sends two messages: outwards, to allies, and adversaries, that it's modernizing its military, and inwards to domestic industry, that innovation is prioritized. This exercise was part of Greece's broader defense modernization plan, which is from 2025 to 2036, including spending 25 billion euros to overhaul its armed forces. It demonstrates not just drones used for surveillance, but also combat support roles, mines, delayed explosive deliveries, supply, logistics to forward positions, psychological warfare, messaging via drones. Can you imagine like millions of miniature drones flying over neighborhoods? You will assimilate, you will assimilate, you will assimilate. You will become one of us. The U.S. isn't holding back either. The U.S. Army announced plans to acquire 1 million drones over the next 2 to 3 years to keep pace with modern warfare, particularly as seen in the conflict in Ukraine. Army Secretary Daniel Driscoll stated the goal is to create a robust domestic supply chain for drones, treating them more like expendable ammunition and expanding partnerships beyond large defense contractors to include commercial companies. This initiative aims to signify and significantly boost the Army's drone inventory from its current rate of about 50,000 per year and prepare the nation for potential future conflicts. 1 million drones, huh? What are these drones going to look like? How advanced are they going to be? How often will we see them? What will they be used for? The Army plans to buy at least 1 million drones within the next 2 to 3 years. The objective is to rapidly scale up the number of drones in the Army's arsenal. The decision is driven by observations of how drones have been used in conflicts like the war in Ukraine. And do you know where the next Ukraine is going? Do you know where the US's Ukraine is going to be? Hopefully not in the States. Anyway, I see Venezuela having parallels to Ukraine. And I'll tell you why. Because Russia, Iran, China, and other nations are backing Venezuela. If we go into Venezuela militarily with heavy force, it's not going to be an easy war at all. If anything, it could be far more difficult than some of these wars in the Middle East, like especially the first war in Iraq, how we went in there and just completely annihilated their military forces in an extremely short amount of time using psychological warfare and cutting-edge technologies. Well, Venezuela has some serious backing, and they've got some pretty good technologies out there, some high-tech Russian missiles and Russian fighters, and Russia would just love to see the U.S., in my opinion, the Russian military would love to see the U.S. military deplete itself in Venezuela, kind of like Russia and Ukraine have been going back and forth now for several years, and the U.S. and other nations have been helping Ukraine stay afloat and continue to combat Russia. So this drone shift, do you remember a few years ago when there was that defense contractor that was showing off the new drone technology that could track individuals specifically. That's pretty spooky. Like, imagine a smart drone that's capable of traveling 300 miles an hour or faster, about the size of a football, that could move hundreds of miles via satellite technology and remote control. And it had specific individual targets using the latest artificial intelligence. That isn't very far down the road in my vision of warfare, because they've had this technology for at least a decade. They've shared the technology, and then people have forgotten about it. So we've got the drone apocalypse. Everybody's going to have drone. I mean, that's another thing that Elon Musk would probably love too. You know how Elon Musk was saying that in the future, if you're a troublemaker, you won't even need to go to jail. You won't even need to see your parole officer, because they'll have a Tesla bot that'll follow you around that makes sure you stay in line. And if you get out of line, that robot will stop your ass. I can envision everybody having a personal robot attached to them and a personal drone attached to them. So everywhere they go, that robot and that drone is tracking them in real time, whether they're considered good or bad on the naughty list or not, and potentially read the brainwaves of that individual and decide whether or not they need to control that individual. But they could pitch it as like the next phone. Oh, forget your phone. You've now got your own personal drone and your own personal robot. So anything you need, they will do for you. You need to ride to work, they'll drive the car, the robo-taxi. Hell, you could just hop on the robot and like it'll give you a piggyback ride. Oh, your drone can do everything for you. Your drone can pick up your groceries. Your drone can take care of all the appointments for you. It can track you everywhere you go. You want it to record everything you do so you can just upload it via the web afterward. Oh, hey, check it out. I don't even have to have, like, I have my own personal drone connected to my brainwaves now, and I just think, and it does what I think. But if I think something that the powers that be don't want me to think, then we can get that interface where it will emoji you. It will send you an emoji or some type of meme that will change your mind. Like, they don't even need to MK Ultra you anymore. They can MK Ultra you with memes and GIFs and just the most ridiculous. It's going to be meme news, meme news. That's a great way to change your mind without even watching the news. You'll see an emoji on a meme that'll change your mind, and they'll like, I mean, the technology now with psychology, predictive programming, quantum computers, supercomputers that calculate quadrillions of floating points per second, taking all your data, uploading it to the cloud, and then predicting what you're going to do next, and then what product they're going to sell you next. Welcome to the new world order. Okay, I digress. I divert. Let's go to the next article here. Drones over airspace at airports and nuclear facilities and military bases. Unauthorized drone activity over airports and nuclear facilities has led to airspace closures, prompting concerns about security and hybrid warfare tactics in Europe and the US. These incidents have caused disruptions and led to investigations into whether the flights are a form of espionage or intimidation. Though operations remain unidentified, while the drones themselves may pose no physical danger to nuclear reactors, their presence has prompted governments to bolster anti-drone capabilities. In late 2025, several European airports, including Copenhagen, Berlin, and Munich, have experienced disruptions due to drone sightings, resulting in temporary shutdowns. Nuclear facilities spotted the Dole nuclear power plant in Belgium, leading to security alerts, but no operational impact. Officials, including the Danish Prime Minister, have called the incidents serious threats, with Russia denying involvement despite the connection to countries supporting Ukraine. Hybrid warfare. The flights are seen by some as a form of hybrid warfare, using drones for intelligence gathering, psychological pressure, and testing defenses. So there's anti-drone technologies in place, like anti-drone nets, jammers. How about the two U.S. aircraft that crashed within a couple of hours of each other in the South China Sea. People came out immediately. Mainstream news. Was this espionage? And then China denied it. We would never do that. Maybe they didn't. Very weird. Countries are investing in deploying anti-drone systems, radar, jamming technologies to neutralize drones. So there you go. Russia is increasingly targeting trains as attacks on Ukraine rail networks intensify. Listen to this. Ukraine has recorded a sharp increase in attacks on its railway infrastructure since early to mid 2025. One article reports that in 2025, there were some 800 railway-related attacks, damaging over 3,000 railway objects. The network is critically important. The rail system handles more than 63% of freight and about 37% of passengers' traffic in Ukraine, according to state statistics. The nature of the attacks has evolved. Long-range drones, modified versions of the Iranian origin Shahed 136 are now being used to strike locomotives, rail junctions, and other nodes. A strike at the station of Shostka in northern Ukraine targeted commuter and other trains. According to the CEO of the Ukrainian State Railway Company, Ukrzhelnitsya, the attacks are systematic and intended to strike civilian infrastructure, not purely military logistics. Russia's pretty happy about this, though. Russian research vessels have reportedly identified potential oil reserves of approximately 511 billion barrels in the Weddell Sea region of Antarctica. This information was presented as evidence to the UK House of Commons Environmental Audit Committee, May of 2024, sparking significant geopolitical concerns. The estimated 511 billion barrels would be one of the largest oil reserves on the planet. This is about double Saudi Arabia's proven reserves and more than 10 times the North Sea's total output over the last 50 years. This discovery was made in an area that is part of the British Antarctic Territory, which also has overlapping territorial claims from Chile and Argentina. Oh, interesting. The core issue is the 1959 Antarctic Treaty, which designates the continent as a zone for peaceful and scientific purposes only and explicitly prohibits all mineral and oil extraction. The continent does not belong to any single country. Now, this is going to be very interesting to see what happens here, because that kind of oil and the kind of money that oil brings and power, we could see that treaty evaporate fairly quick. And I could see it actually evaporate before 2030, especially with the push to take control of Greenland and usurp Greenland into the States. If that happens, I could see Russia being even more aggressive in wanting this chunk and wanting this area and this territory. So that could be a very, very, that's a tinderbox right there. So Russia maintains its activities are purely for scientific research and in compliance with the treaty. Experts and Western officials are concerned that the seismic data collection is a form of resource prospecting. Well, of course it is. Professor Klaus Dodds, a geopolitics expert, told the EAC that Russia's actions could signal a threat to the permanent ban on mining and are part of a broader strategic competition. So as of late this year and last year, no commercial extraction has begun or is permitted under the current international agreement. This data has not been independently verified in open scientific literature. Oh, Al-Biba. According to the White House, Al-Biba is helping Chinese military target the U.S. You don't say. Here's a breakdown. A U.S. national security memo cited by the Financial Times states that Alibaba provided the Chinese military with technology support that could threaten U.S. security. Specific alleged assistance includes cloud computing and AI-related services, access to user data, IP addresses, Wi-Fi info, payment records, and knowledge of zero-day software vulnerabilities, which are software flaws not yet patched. The memo is dated November 1st of this year. The U.S. government reportedly has not publicly detailed what U.S. targets or systems are involved or what the specific plan of action will be. Alibaba strongly denies the allegations, calling them complete nonsense and politically motivated. China's embassy in Washington labeled the memo a complete distortion of facts. Well, yeah, like they're going to tell you, oh, by the way, you know how we're sending everything via Temu and you can get all these products for cheap and get free shipping. And like, I haven't ordered anything from Temu, but Kristen has. And I mean, I have friends that have ordered stuff from Temu, and I think to myself, every time you order something from Temu, are they data mining you? Is that how they make up for some of the money that they're losing with free shipping? But they've got your credit card info, they've got your IP info, they've got a ton of data on you just by ordering something from that company. It's very interesting to think about, and it could be a great way to gather intel, whether you're the CCP or the US or any nation for that matter. Intel gathering. But they would never do that. It's just for stuff, just to buy stuff. Did you hear about this? Japan has this railgun now. It's a prototype railgun that is turning hypersonic gunfire into cheap munitions. And it is a hard to stop answer to China's missile and drone swarms and hinting at a gun-driven comeback in surface warfare. This is pretty wild. So Japan's Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics Agency, ATLA, has publicly shown developments of an electromagnetic railgun intended to launch projectiles at extremely high velocities, at over 2,000 meters a second, as part of research programs, just for research. The gun is often described as a ship-mounted prototype on the JS Asuka test vessel and aimed towards the challenge of countering hypersonic missiles. Analysts highlight that such a weapon could offer a cheaper per round option versus expensive interceptor missiles. Hell yeah, it could, especially given the high costs and limited magazine capacities of current missile-based defenses. That's pretty cool. This is a little bit intense. So check this out. Japan's prime minister said in parliament that if China attacked Taiwan, such an action could be a survival-threatening situation for Japan, implying Japan could respond militarily. China strongly condemns the remarks, calling them an egregious interference in its internal affairs, and warned Japan would bear all consequences if it intervened. So then the dispute escalated further. China issued a travel advisory urging its citizens to avoid Japan, partly in response to the Taiwan remarks. Chinese Coast Guard vessels and drones were deployed near the disputed Senkaku Islands in waters contested by Japan. Japan has sent a diplomatic envoy to China to try to calm the situation, while publicly maintaining its one China policy, but reinforcing its defense posture. Public opinion in Japan is split. A poll found 48.8% support Japan exercising collective self-defense if China attacks Taiwan, and 44.2% oppose it. Now, the socialist mayor of New York, Zoran Mandani, has proposed a sweeping agenda that includes a rent freeze on all rent-stabilized units and the power to strip ownership from problem landlords, which has caused alarm among property owners. You don't say. He is a democratic socialist who is now the mayor of New York City, the biggest city in the nation. And he campaigned on an affordability platform that directly targets landlords. Key aspects of his agenda that affect property owners include rent freeze, Mandani's signature proposal is to use his control of the city's rent guidelines board to implement an immediate multi-year rent freeze on all rent-stabilized apartments, which comprise nearly half of the city's rental stock. Wow. Public foreclosure. His platform suggests an expanded public foreclosure style process to transfer properties from landlords who repeatedly violate code, neglect repairs, or rip off tenants into public hands. Okay. Mandani has proposed a $100 billion plan to tackle the housing crisis through a publicly led building campaign with a goal of building or enabling 200,000 new affordable homes over 10 years. To fund his expansive plans, including housing and universal child care, Mandani proposes a 2% income tax increase on New Yorkers earning over $1 million annually and a new corporate tax, which critics say could drive wealthy residents and businesses out of the city. Oh, you don't say. Mandani's recent victory is seen by supporters as a clear mandate for his left-wing policies, though he will need state approval for many of his tax and housing plans. The transition's been bumpy, with current Mayor Eric Adams accused by Mandani of attempting to derail his affordable housing agenda, notably regarding a proposed development at the Elizabeth Street Garden. And the New York City commercial real estate industry has indicated a desire to work with Mandani despite their concerns, while some housing economists warned that the rent freeze could ultimately exacerbate the city's housing shortage by discouraging new developments and maintenance. His next major challenge will be in Albany, where he and his allies will pressure Governor Kathy Hochul and the state legislature to approve his tax and spending plans. Probably not going to happen, but hey, he can dream. Speaking of dream, did you hear about this? Where's it at? Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro recently invoked and sang lyrics from John Lennon's peace anthem, Imagine, during a public rally as a call for peace amid rising tensions with the United States. Just a couple days ago, during an event with supporters in Caracas, Maduro spoke about the importance of peace and cited John Lennon before a recording of Imagine was played. He sang a few words and waved peace signs alongside the crowd. He encouraged young people to look up the song's lyrics, calling it an anthem for all eras and generations, a gift from John Lennon to humanity. The event occurred as the U.S. had recently stationed a naval presence, including the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier near Venezuelan waters, as part of an anti-drug trafficking operation, which the Maduro government views as a show of force and potential threat. This action has heightened fears of a potential U.S.-backed overthrow of military conflict in the region, which Maduro's gesture was seen by some as a desperate peace bid to de-escalate. That was kind of the first vibe I got, actually. And I'm not even trying to be rude. I just thought to myself, man, that's desperate. Because do you really think this? I mean, I don't know who he is. I haven't met him personally, so I can't tell you I know what his personality's like. I can just guess. But do you really think he's about peace and Imagine? You really think John Lennon's like one of his favorite singers and that song is one of his favorite songs? Or do you think he's worried about not only losing power, but potentially more? Like, I don't know. I think it sounded kind of desperate. But, I mean, the U.S. military knocking on your door, yeah, it's a pretty big deal, man. It's a pretty big deal. You know what else is a big deal? Iran turns to cloud seeding from a historic 50-year drought. 50-year drought. Listen to this. Iran is experiencing its driest autumn in 50 years, with rainfall nationwide reportedly down around 85 to 90% compared to long-term averages. That's spooky. And do you know what that has me thinking of? Now, this is pure speculation. Oh, hey, Lavera, thank you so much for the super chat. I just noticed that. Thank you so much. Cheers. Boom. Hello. Thank you. Okay, so Iran is dealing with unprecedented drought. It's probably just natural, right? I mean, it's probably just the earth and its current condition and the sun and all the other, I mean, Or is there something more to it? Like, could there potentially be behind the scenes, like some kind of geomodification, geoengineering going on? Like I said, probably not, but that was one of the first things I thought of. Like, Iran is dealing with unprecedented drought and all of the conflict in the Middle East. Once again, probably not, but it came to my mind and I thought I'd share it with you because some of you have probably thought that as well. Do we have any evidence of there being geoengineering in that region to prevent rain on Iran? No, I don't have any. So like I said, pure speculation, but it's interesting to think about. But what is also interesting is how Iran is turning to cloud seeding. Many of Iran's major reservoirs are at critically low levels. Major cities, including Tehran, are facing the possibility of taps running dry. In response, Iran has begun cloud seeding operations to try to induce rainfall. For example, a flight over the basin of Lake Urmia in the northwest was reported as the first of the water year. Officials admit the technique is a stopgap measure, noting that cloud seeding cannot create clouds out of nothing. It only works with existing moisture in the atmosphere. Now, it's a pretty big deal, though. And, excuse me, it makes me think of last year in April. So last year, Saudi Arabia gets hit with a historic flood after a massive storm system. The United Arab Emirates, the UAE, has a long-standing cloud seeding program, and flights were active in the days prior to the flooding. Most experts and the UAE government deny that cloud seeding was a significant cause of the extreme rainfall. If it was traditional cloud seeding, that would not have caused that significant rainfall. If it was some type of experimental cloud seeding that I don't know about, technologies that I don't know about, I'm willing to leave that possibility open, but traditional cloud seeding would not have caused that significant rainfall. It would just be impossible. But what are the other technologies and experiments that they're doing that we don't know about publicly, that we should know about? And how does that affect the world? How does that affect environments? I'll give you an example. Several years ago, I read a article from Norway. I think it was a news article from Norway, and I did report on it. And this article said that the world and everybody in the world was a part of an experiment, whether they wanted to be or not. Now, can I confirm this article 100%? No. So let's just go to what the article said. It says that the world is being used as an experiment, and whether you like it or not, you're a part of this experiment. And the world councils have got together and they've decided to, or they're talking about stopping. Let me repeat that. They're looking for ways to save the planet through geoengineering and weather modification. And the computer model showed that if they were going to do global operations like stratospheric aerosol injection, stuff all the way up in the stratosphere, stuff that could stay there for long periods of time, not like your typical airplanes that fly and leave contrails, and these contrails turn into chem clouds because of the atmospheric conditions and the radiation that's coming in and nucleating this fuel emission and turning it into a cloud. Those are contrails. They look like chems. I get it. But you can actually get a tracker on your phone and track these planes, and you can see that the majority of the time when you see an airplane leaving this gnarly contrail that turns into a cloud, and then you'll see these X patterns because the flight operators are, they keep these planes in these X patterns for flight control and safety reasons. Well, these X's will then like dissipate and you'll get this cloud cover. So people will speculate that that is some type of chemtrail, but it's contrails combined with the pollution in the contrails and the radiation hitting those contrails, it turns it into cloud cover anyway. Now, I did find a patent several years ago for additives that could be used in the fuel supply of jets that could help create cloud cover. So you wouldn't need a million independent jets to drop these trails for clouds. You could just add it to the commercial flight planes, and you wouldn't even need additional tanks because you're just putting it in the jet fuel. If you could put an additive in the jet fuel that could, combined with the cosmic radiation, create a type of cloud cover, well, that could be one potential way to create clouds without having to have an entirely different program. You just put a little something, something in the jet fuel and voila. But this was really interesting to read about this, this situation in Dubai and the rainfall and that big flood that they had out there right after they cloud seeded. We got people. So, hey, everybody. Hey, everyone. Thank you for commenting. Would you do me a favor and hit the bell for all notifications here on YouTube if you're watching us here on YouTube? And if you're watching us on Rumble, would you subscribe to our Rumble page, please? It'll just take you 90 seconds and it's totally free. And that helps the algorithms. If you'll leave a comment on our Rumble page and our YouTube page, that would be much appreciated. Oh yeah. Yeah. I do have that COVID workout suit. Memories. Yeah. I'll have to get back into that. Ozzy Stern will be back. Zorg will be back. Definitely. Okay. So what do we got next? Germany unveils plans to create Europe's strongest army. German lawmakers have unveiled the new military service plan, mandating all 18-year-old men to indicate their suitability to serve. There are some nations that require military service. I think Finland is one, and I think Israel is another. Let's look this up. Nations that require military service. Israel, Brazil, South Korea, Denmark, Austria, Finland, Russia, Switzerland, Greece. Wow. Sweden, North Korea, South Korea, Singapore, Eritrea, Mozambique. Huh. I didn't know that there were that many countries with mandatory military service. Look at all that. I wonder if that'll happen in the States. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened here in the U.S., especially if we're getting ready for World War III. There will probably be a draft, most likely. Wouldn't you think? But let's look at the let's go back to the military and what Germany has planned. Germany's chancellor has publicly pledged that the Bundeswehr will become the strongest conventional army in Europe. The defense budget is set to rise significantly. Germany plans to reach defense spending of 3.5% of GDP by 2029. There's that 2029 again, 2030, 2029. What is going on in 2030? A major procurement overhaul is underway. Internal planning documents show Germany preparing a 377 billion euro procurement blueprint covering land, air, sea, space, and cyber domains. Recruitment, conscription reforms. The government is exploring a new model where all 18-year-old men fill out suitability questionnaires for service, though full conscription is not being immediately reinstated. All right. We went over how the president of Venezuela is singing Imagine in hopes of not being, well, and the U.S., they're building up, they're stockpiling. Here's what we know right now about the Operation Southern Spear and the Caribbean Surge. We've got, since late August, the U.S. has been building up forces in the Southern Caribbean under what's broadly framed as a counter-drug campaign, often called Operation Southern Spear. By late October, the U.S. had approximately 10,000 troops in the region, roughly half in Puerto Rico, half at sea, with destroyers, submarines, F-35 fighters, MQ-9 Reaper drones, special operations forces, and an amphibious ready group in play. The amphibious ready group is the USS Iwo Jima. As of mid-November, the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group has made it. The U.S.'s most advanced aircraft carrier has arrived in the Caribbean, pushing total U.S. personnel in the area to about 15,000, making this the largest regional U.S. buildup not tied to disaster relief since Haiti of 94. Since early September, U.S. forces have carried out multiple lethal boat strikes on vessels Washington describes as narco-trafficker boats off Venezuela's coast and beyond. The CIA has been formally authorized to support these operations, including potential missions inside Venezuela against targets said to sit at the nexus of cartels and the Maduro government. The FAA has imposed a special flight restriction zone near Ceiba, Puerto Rico through March 2026, reflecting the intensity, sensitivity of military activity in that corridor. That's a big deal. Trinidad and Tobago, which is just 7 miles from Venezuela at the closest point, is hosting U.S. Marines and other forces for a week-long exercise focused on amphibious special operations and counter-drug missions right off Venezuela's doorstep. Additional U.S. exercises in Panama and Puerto Rico involve about 2,200 Marines, including live fire, rapid deployment drills, essentially rehearsing logistics and staging for any contingency in the Southern Caribbean. You don't think we're getting ready to just, wow. A converted special operations mothership, the MV Ocean Trader, 160th SOAR Night Stalkers helicopters, plus B-52 bombers and F-35s have also been spotted or reported operating near the Caribbean theater. The official line, this is about drug cartels and narco terrorists, not regime change. Well, they did just label one of the organizations or gangs in Venezuela as terrorist, and I'll get that in just a moment. Analysts in European security papers openly note that hardware doesn't match a pure drug mission and interpret it as a dual-use pressure on Maduro's regime, potentially preparing operations or options for limited strikes on land targets if ordered. So what is Venezuela's response? Massive exercises and mobilization. The Caracas has launched large-scale military exercises framed at defending against U.S. aggression and a possible invasion. Initial major maneuvers in September in the Caribbean with Navy and Air Force elements. A nationwide mobilization announced in November across 284 battlefront zones involving military, police, and civilian militias. You can read about that at Reuters. A headline exercise this month reportedly involves up to 200,000 troops as the U.S. flotilla and the Ford CSG move into the region. Venezuela says it's boosting troop levels from 10,000 to 25,000 in strategic coastal and border states and others under the banner of fighting drug trafficking and defending sovereignty. Maduro has repeatedly framed this as preparing battlefronts against U.S. regime change plans. Venezuelan forces have released fresh cockpit footage of F-16 and Su-30 fighter jets conducting joint drills, clearly meant to telegraph deterrent capabilities as U.S. assets mass offshore. Venezuela's inventory includes Russian-supplied Su-30s, S-300 air defense systems, which are pretty high-tech, man-portable SA-24 missiles, per local reports, Iranian origin CM-90 anti-ship missiles, now tied into a Navy missile center inaugurated in 2024. Caracas claims to be moving naval units and coastal missiles batteries to face what it calls a U.S. armada, and has vowed to respond if its ships or territory are attacked. Venezuela has suspended gas-filled cooperation with Trinidad and Tobago in protest over port of Spain hosting U.S. warships and drills, explicitly linking energy ties to the U.S. military presence. That's the Dragonfield. Maduro's rhetoric emphasizes that Washington wants Venezuela's oil and is using narco framing as cover. He has also warned about potential strikes on dual-use ports and airstrips. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Russia, Cuba, and possibly Venezuela, external naval muscle in the Caribbean. So since mid-2024, Russia has been visibly back in the Caribbean. A Russian naval group includes the frigate Admiral Gorshkov and nuclear-powered submarine Kazan made multiple visits to Havana. conducting Atlantic drills and showcasing Zircon hypersonic missiles en route. That's why I say I can see if we go attack Venezuela, I could see Venezuela could kind of be like Ukraine in the sense that there's a bunch of nations feeding Ukraine to fight the war with Russia. Now, if we go to war with Venezuela, there will be nations feeding Venezuela to fight the war against the U.S. So the U.S. and European analysts intercepted these as signaling to Washington, a reminder that Moscow can put modern warships and subs close to U.S. shores and in the same general theater as the Venezuelan crisis. U.S. officials have said that they expect Russian naval exercises in the Caribbean with possible port calls in Cuba and possibly Venezuela, framing them as relatively small but politically loaded. In May, Russia and Venezuela signed a strategic partnership agreement, and Moscow has since denounced the U.S. buildup as excessive military force, while pledging to defend Venezuela's sovereignty. Leaked or reported documents show Maduro drafting a letter asking Moscow for missiles, radars, and upgraded aircraft as U.S. forces amass offshore. Some Russian commentary openly frames their warship presence near Venezuela as a restructuring of power in the hemisphere, not a one-off port call. Iran has publicly condemned U.S. strikes on boats near Venezuela as arbitrary and has appealed to the UN, clearly aligning itself with Caracas diplomatically. Venezuelan systems like the CM-90 anti-ship missile center show Tehran's earlier defense exports are already baked into Caracas's coastal defense plan. And Cuba remains a key staging and signal venue. Russian warships using Havana as a hub for Atlantic Caribbean drills are indirectly part of the same strategic picture, putting allied forces, Russia, Cuba, Venezuela axis opposite the U.S. regional partner posture. Wow. Don't worry, data centers will protect you. Isn't it amazing how like it went from global warming and everything needs to be electric. We need to get rid of all gasoline cars. We need to hook everything up to electricity. We need to eat the bugs. Like we shouldn't have air conditioning. We shouldn't fly. Only the super rich can fly in their chartered jets and their private jets. But the little people, the common people, we're the ones that are the problems to the world. Like that's the way the news was, making. Oh, you want to eat a steak? Do you know how many gallons of water it takes to make one steak? Do you know how many gallons of water it takes to make a hamburger? You should. Anyway, now all of that is kind of like second nature because the amount of power needed to power artificial intelligence and data centers is beyond ridiculous. It's beyond gasoline-powered cars. It's beyond eating meat. This is insanity. Look at this. And this could be potentially on the low side. Various reports and analysts indicate that the U.S. will need approximately 69 gigawatts of power capacity for data centers alone between this year and 2028. This demand is driven largely by the rise of artificial intelligence. This rapid increase is expected to cause significant electricity shortages and place substantial strain on existing power grids. Current projections highlight a significant gap between the projected power demand and available supply. 69 gigawatts, that's the low end. Okay, a nuclear power plant, a very powerful nuclear power plant can produce about 1 gigawatt. So that means we need 69 nuclear power plants just to power, on the low end, data centers and artificial intelligence. Wow. That seems pretty inefficient to me. Like, shouldn't this technology be so amazing that it shows us how to produce these technologies without the exuberant amount of energy? The amount of energy that it takes for a human to think in conjunction with an artificial intelligence to think the same thing, like, it's a fraction of the energy that we need. Not even it's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. Yes, supercomputers, quantum computers can calculate scenarios now and solve problems, quantum computers in particular, that some supercomputers would take quadrillions of years to calculate and predict and to solve. So why don't you use that technology to figure out a way to create these data centers without building another 100 nuclear power plants just to power the data centers? Why don't we start building these data centers in space? That's what really needs to be done, because they're getting so massive and they require so much power. They could be powered in space by the sun and cooled by space. Listen to this. A recent report states that U.S. data centers are expected to require roughly 69 gigawatts of new electrical capacity between this year and 2028, over the next 3 years. On that demand, only about 10 gigawatts is tied to data centers already under construction. Another 15 gigawatts might be deliverable under current grid plan builds. That leaves a shortfall of approximately 44 gigawatts of capacity needing to be built or allocated. This surge is driven by growth in AI, hyperscale cloud, and high-performance computing workloads. Now, the 69 gigawatt figure appears in industry commentary and may not come from a formal peer-reviewed or government-validated estimate. Other credible sources, such as a DOE-backed report, Berkeley National Laboratory projects the data center power demand could reach 74 to 132 gigawatts by 2028. It's almost double. 132 gigawatts by 2028. That corresponds to between 6.7 and 12% of U.S. total electricity. 12% of our electrical grid for data centers that store data on you to predict what you're going to do and how to control you, amongst many other things. What to sell you, what threat factor you are, what you like, what you don't like, what you'll potentially like, what you potentially won't like. So 69 gigawatts refers to a capacity for new or expanded data center build-outs, not total energy consumed. A lot depends on whether data centers share load, use efficiency innovations, purchase dedicated generation, or aggregate demand in new ways. Technological improvements, cooling innovations, and location shifts can also alter trajectories. Grid access, permitting, transmission build-outs, local incentives, regulation, and utilities' ability to deliver high-capacity service will strongly affect outcomes. The article from Brookings emphasizes permitting energy and water constraints for data centers. So one of the things that they want to do is they want to build these nuclear reactors that they're going to bury about a mile underground. That's the plan. These micro reactors buried a mile underground to power these data centers. If you're close to these data centers, like if you have a house in a suburb that recently they built a data center a block away, a few blocks away, a lot of people in these suburbs are reporting these sounds that they cannot get rid of, these low humming sounds that make it to where they can't sleep, they get headaches, they can't function normally. It messes with their circadian rhythm, they claim. And like I've seen news articles where people have changed out their windows, they've added new siding, they've got like new blinds, and they can still hear this very low humming. And even if you can't hear it in some places, you can feel it. Doesn't that sound exciting? Constantly going through your body. Wouldn't you just love that? After you spend $1 million on a house, on a 30-year mortgage that you're going to end up spending probably $4 million on that house because the interest rate's going to get you another $3 million. And, you're basically paying on it for 30 years. Well, now you've got this noise that's a block away from a data center that is getting all sorts of like incentives, tax incentives, building incentives. And it could maybe 100 people are going to work there after it's built. Maybe. If it's a big data center, it might have 100 jobs. Yeah. It's because they love you so much. They love you. Seizing the initiative against Russia, putting the United States in control. This is from the Institute for the Study of War. It argues that the U.S. must move from reactive to proactive posture against Russia, not simply responding to Russian actions in Ukraine, Europe, or the wider world, but seizing the initiative. The report highlights that Russia currently seeks the initiative in information, cognitive space, and hybrid warfare, and in setting operational tempo. The ISW holds that the U.S. and its allies must establish control of the initiative, define the battle space, the domains, the timeline, rather than letting Russia dictate it. The paper is authorized by ISW's non-resident Russia fellow, Natalia Bugayova. ISW frames this not just as Ukraine's war, but as a broader competition. America must be able to seize the initiative against any actor it may need to fight. So, the report says one element of seizing initiative is asserting dominance in the cognitive information domain, shaping narratives, disinformation, and public perception, breaking Russia's tempo. ISW emphasizes that Russia is comfortable with attritional, slow grind warfare. Thus, the U.S. allies should shift the tempo to their favor. Sustained long-range strike capabilities, the need for the U.S. and allies to support Ukraine, and deterrence via long-range strike, logistics, air defense, and production of advanced weapons. Allies and industrial base. The West must ramp up its defense industrial output, diversify supply chains, and ensure allies are capable, not just the U.S. alone. Wow. Sounds like they're getting ready for war to me. Remember that. So this was if you're just joining us, thank you for joining us. HARP is conducting some research over the next few days, and there were ridiculous Facebook posts claiming that HARP was the reason that we're seeing the Aurora Borealis here in the States, and that's complete nonsense. Now, they are doing these experiments potentially during these very active Aurora Borealis to get more information, and they can create visible auroras in close proximity, but nowhere near the power to change the ionosphere to the extent that we're going to see the Aurora Borealis here in the States. That is from the sun. I just want to make that very clear. That is from Seoul. But the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program will be conducting a research campaign August 12th through 15th. They did that. You can see what they did. And they're also doing it again from today until November 22nd. So you can actually find that information directly on their website. They will share with you what they're doing and when they're doing it. Now, are there secret projects they're doing? Probably, but this is what we do know, so I thought I would share it with you. Hello. Oh, yeah, did you hear about this? California revoked about 17,000 commercial driver's licenses. California revokes 17,000. California is revoking 17,000 approximately commercial driver's licenses that were issued to non-domiciled drivers after a federal audit found that many licenses extended past the time the drivers were legally allowed to remain in the U.S. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration audit found a significant number of licenses in California that did not comply with federal requirements. The United States Department of Transportation, US DOT, under Secretary Sean Duffy, has threatened to withhold up to about $160 million in federal highway transport funds from California if the state does not comply. A federal appeals court temporarily blocked new DOT rules that would further restrict immigrants from obtaining CDLs, but those blocked rules are not the immediate basis for California's revocations. The revocation is tied to existing state-federal law mismatches. Good to know. Good to know. This guy right here, we definitely need to keep our eyes on. Big time. I think just as much as 3i Atlas. This could be a potential problem, and it is a NEO, near-Earth object. Initially, there was about a 4% chance when they checked its trajectory that they thought it could, astronomers thought that it could hit Earth. It has since changed, and now they say it could hit the moon. And they're talking about potentially nuking it or some other technologies to divert it. And this is the latest images. So be prepared, not scared, I say. It's always good to be prepared, not scared. Let's see what we've got over here. Let's go back over to 3i Atlas real quick. If you're just joining us, thank you for being here. This is the latest image of 3i Atlas, and this was taken from a ground-based telescope in New Mexico. Credit to Satoru Murata. This image of 3i Atlas combines 24 exposures of 60 seconds each with a 0.2 meter telescope, which is the Celestron Edge HD 800. The telescope that I have is very similar to that. I have a Meade 8-inch LX ACF LX 200, which has dual mount on it. So if I want to hook a camera up to it, it'll stay stable. And if anybody wants to help me get this thing auto track for 3i Atlas, send me an email, give me a call, send me a text on Facebook, because I've got the technology and the equipment to track this thing. I just don't know how to do it. So I could probably figure it out. I'm sure I could figure it out, but I would much rather meet with somebody that already has it figured out so we could just hook this thing up. And then I could actually live stream 3i Atlas to all of you, because I would love to share this live with you guys and gals. And we're out here in Southern Colorado, so we have some pretty dark skies, and we can see a lot of the skies. So let's see what Loeb has to say about this. Oh, I think he's just showing us the images. So, and then you can see it from right here as well. This image is the arrangement of the solar system at the time that picture was taken. 3i is moving to the right and up. So the dust tail, which lags behind the ion tail, will be displaced to the left as indicated, although I do not know the angle of displacement. To me, this looks like a long, straight ion tail with some wiggles in it, and a dust tail, more fan-like and presumably behind the plasma tail from the vantage point of Earth. The ion tail should look substantially longer to JUICE, which is that spacecraft that was studying moons of Jupiter, hence the name JUICE, and it recently got data from the ion tail earlier this month. The dust tail will be in front of the ion tail, not behind it, and by comparing images, it should be possible to actually map both of them in 3D. So this is where 3i Atlas was when captured. And this was taken today. Dude. Here we go. Common 3i Atlas. The exposure duration is 330 seconds. The FOV is 28 times 34 minutes of arc and 3 times 4 minutes of arc to the right. Orientation north, up, east, left. At the time of observation, the object was 43 degrees from the sun and moving at a rate of 109 hour at PA equal 289 degrees. The coordinate grid is ecliptic, J2000. The contour plot right shows 40 levels between the background and the maximum value of the nucleus, courtesy of Didi Balam. This is the Canadian Space Agency Near-Earth Object, NEO, orbiting telescope. Cool. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. All right. Hey, Angela, what's up? Good to see you. Cheers. Hope you're having a beautiful day today. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with me. Would you do me a huge favor and share this video out on your social media? Hit the thumbs up, leave a comment in the comment section. I would really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And also hit the bell for all notifications. We're doing exclusive content on Patreon, field trips, long format interviews. This Boomer Boost and Gladiator Barley is on sale. If you go to boomerboost.com, use the code REX20, you'll get 20% off. And I take this stuff like every single day. I do a scoop of the Boomer Boost, a scoop of the Gladiator Barley. I'm still trying to get them to change the name to Gen X Boost because I think they'd sell more that way, at least to Gen X, you know what I mean? But anyway, stuff is awesome. Like, look at all the stuff that's in this. So much great stuff. Kombucha cheers. All right. Have a beautiful day, everybody. Thank you. Be the change you want to see.